It's Friday, June 19th, 2026. Happy Juneteenth, and it is time for The Swamp, where I cover daily updates inside the federal machine. If you enjoyed the video, please give a quick like and subscribe, leave a comment, and click on the notification bell, and I'll keep you up to date on everything in The Swamp from Monday through Friday. Every article in this episode is linked directly below in the description, and the highlight segments from tonight's episode will be dropping tomorrow morning. Kicking things off with Secretary Kennedy. He says, thank you to Tulsi for documenting Dr. Fauci's central role in causing the COVID-19 pandemic, among the most consequential crimes in human history. Bold statement, very accurate statement. And Tulsi Gabbard dropped this late last night after I had stopped recording last night's episode of The Swamp. An absolute bombshell. I had to lead with this tonight. Today, on my final day as Director of National Intelligence, I'm releasing never-before-seen communications and documents exposing how Dr. Fauci provided millions in U.S. taxpayer dollars to fund dangerous gain-of-function research at the Wuhan lab, worked with politicized elements within the intelligence community to suppress the truth about his actions and hide the virus's lab leak origins, and lied to Congress while under oath in 2024. It's time you know the truth. Let's hear what she has to say.
Before the COVID pandemic, Dr. Fauci, as head of the National Institute of Allergy and Infectious Diseases, provided millions in U.S. taxpayer dollars to fund dangerous gain-of-function research on bat coronaviruses at the Wuhan Institute of Virology, work which is now widely viewed as the source of the unintentional lab leak that sparked the pandemic. Now, in support of President Trump's maximum transparency mandate, today, on my final day as Director of National Intelligence, I'm releasing never-before-seen communications and documents that expose exactly how Fauci worked with politicized career leadership in the intelligence community to suppress the truth about his actions, the virus's lab leak origins, and his role in directing U.S. funding for this dangerous research that caused immeasurable harm and countless lost lives.
Crimes
now, these
against humanity,
documents
man.
expose Fauci's direct role in influencing and manipulating IC assessments on COVID-19 and how Fauci lied to Congress in 2024 when under oath he denied knowledge of or participation in discussions with intelligence officials about viral research.
Yes, he
we
did.
also received testimony from multiple intelligence community whistleblowers who reported retaliation for challenging the intelligence community's manipulation of intelligence on the virus's origins.
Oh, dude, there were people getting full-on canceled on YouTube. Do you remember that? On YouTube, on Facebook, all across social media. Even on what was Twitter at the time. People were getting eviscerated, just knocked off of the social media platforms like crazy just by simply questioning the origin of coronavirus.
Once again, revealing a clear pattern of suppressing dissent, silencing critics, and burying the truth. Dr. Fauci's close relationships with the intelligence community enabled him to assume three key roles that shield him from scrutiny. First, Dr. Fauci funded dangerous gain-of-function coronavirus research linked to Big Pharma and their pursuit of universal vaccines worth trillions of dollars. Second, Dr. Fauci was the behind-the-scenes advisor who, alongside...
That is so fucked up. So they're manufacturing viruses that don't exist in nature, so then they could develop vaccines for those viruses. So then what? It sounds almost like they were going to intentionally release that virus. How many other viruses do they have that they have created gain of function with that they are just going to mysteriously find their way out into the public? And now they have magically vaccines for it. Trillions of dollars. I wonder if the documents might lay out some of those details.
His hand-picked so-called experts pushed the intelligence community to endorse a natural animal origin to hide his dangerous gain-of-function research that he funded using taxpayer dollars, all of this in a deliberate attempt to cover up the truth and shift the blame and attention away from Fauci's own actions.
Wow.
Third, Dr. Fauci became the nation's pandemic pundit, and he publicly pushed lies, disinformation, and censorship using every platform available. Now, according to hundreds of reviewed emails, which are included in this release, the intelligence community almost always incorporated Fauci's recommendations. He promoted a fraudulent paper whose publication he helped prompt as legitimate information for intelligence community consideration. Senior analysts praised Dr. Fauci not as a policymaker, but as what they called an unbiased guide to the real coronavirus experts, while deliberately ignoring experts who might dissent from Fauci's narratives.
Oh, and there were
Fauci
quite a few.
didn't stop there. He blatantly lied to Congress under oath during his 2024 testimony to the House Select Subcommittee on the Coronavirus Pandemic, denying that he ever spoke to any intelligence agency about COVID. Now, the correspondence I'm releasing today directly contradicts his sworn testimony. Now, we received statements from multiple whistleblowers revealing that the intelligence analysts who dared to challenge Dr. Fauci's COVID origin conclusions faced threats of retaliation, marginalization, and many suffered career setbacks. For example, a contractor was terminated just days after coming forward to ODNI as a whistleblower. Another example, those who advocated for the lab leak hypothesis or expressed dissenting views were reminded by their managers that leadership would determine which analysts would be promoted and which would not. The message was clear: go along or be punished. Senior leaders also sought to undermine whistleblowers by removing anonymity, which is required in the whistleblower process, as they made their complaints, and also insisting that their managers or attorneys be present during ODNI meetings where these whistleblowers were coming forward with their testimony, obviously creating an atmosphere of intimidation. The COVID pandemic caused tremendous hardship and pain for millions of our fellow Americans and countless people around the world. Now, after years of lies and censorship and cover-ups, the American people deserve transparency, truth, and accountability. The tactics that were used to hide the truth are straight from the deep state playbook. Politicized, self-serving leaders like Dr. Fauci covered up their own wrongdoing and abuses of power, manipulated intelligence, lied to Congress, and undermined a duly elected president by restricting his access to the vital facts he needed to keep the country safe. It's time you know the truth.
Wow, man, good freaking grief. All right. Well, and she released the information, which, by the way, I seem to remember Dr. Fauci's salary was something like $650,000 a year, which is significantly higher than the President of the United States' salary. And also, of course, Anthony Fauci received a preemptive pardon by Joe Biden, whatever the hell that means. So what, I guess with him, he can lie under oath all he wants because he's got a preemptive pardon, or anything that comes out of coronavirus and the investigations, anything that might be in any of this intelligence information that might be incriminating for Anthony Fauci. What, this preemptive pardon, I guess, just it clears him of all wrongdoing, I suppose. I don't know. But anyway, so that is a bombshell and a half. Excuse me, a bombshell and a half. So let me go ahead and link that. So this is going to be linked in the description, and it's on odni.gov directly from the ODNI. The press release, Fauci funded Wuhan lab research that sparked COVID. I'm assuming that DNI Director Tulsi Gabbard already laid out all of the key details in this, especially since it's not exceedingly long in its length, at least not this part. But this is the nitty gritty, and this will also be linked in the description. So the first link is the index that lines out everything. So if you want to have an overview of all the different line items that are located in the release from Tulsi Gabbard, that will be in that document. And then also this is index number 1. And let's see, how long is this? Let me just have a look and see how many pages in total. So this one is 94 pages, and part 2 is going to be, let's see, 97 pages. So maybe they're going to be roughly about 100 pages each. And of course, there's going to be redacted stuff in it, naturally, especially with the emails, the to and the from. So that's 122 pages. And part 4 is going to consist of 78 pages. So hundreds of pages in total, directly accessible to the public. And again, I'm going to have all that linked if you want to have a look at all of that information. I'm going to move to the office of the DNI, who replied to DNI Tulsi Gabbard and said lies, disinformation, censorship. That was Fauci's playbook. On her final day as DNI, Tulsi Gabbard is executing the president's priorities and taking on the deep state, delivering on Josh Hawley, his COVID Origins Act of 2023, and exposing the truth the American people were denied under the previous administration. and Larry Sanger. So we're going to get into some of the details of the documents. Tulsi Gabbard just released 4 PDFs that she says show that Fauci funded the very research that created COVID-19. I fed Claude the 4 PDFs, and Claude it's an AI system that a lot of people use. I've never used Claude myself, but I'm familiar with it. It's kind of like ChatGPT, only a much better version of it, so I hear. It uncovered some never yet revealed blockbusters. The following is all Claude. I am just quoting it. Okay, so he fed all the information in through Claude, and this is what Claude had produced after it reviewed everything. Starting with number 1, the Intelligence Community Inspector General filed a classified whistleblower complaint alleging intelligence contradicted Fauci's testimony, and the DNI's office effectively buried it. DNI General Counsel Chris Fonzone emailed DNI Avril Haines on August 19, 2021, describing a whistleblower complaint alleging that classified intelligence reporting contradicted Fauci's sworn testimony to Congress that NIH never funded gain-of-function research at WIV, the Wuhan Institute of Virology. Rather than refer it to the HHS Inspector General for independent investigation, Fonzone recommended referring it to HHS Secretary Becerra, Fauci's own boss, noting that Becerra, had told Haines it was, quote, something they've considered, end quote, and that Fauci had a, quote, point he's repeated, end quote. The draft letter was revised to route the complaint to Becerra instead of the HHS IG. This is a previously classified paper trail showing the Biden-era DNI's office treating a formal whistleblower complaint about the potential perjury as essentially a bureaucratic matter to be absorbed by the accused's own department. Number 2, the FBI likely gave false information to Congress about a key COVID origins interview. In a classified September 2024 readout of an HPSCI briefing, the ODNI lead briefer flagged that when Rep. Wenstrup asked the FBI briefer point blank whether they had interviewed a specific individual about COVID origins, the FBI rep said yes, and that the information informed FBI's assessment. The ODNI's briefer's internal email states bluntly that the IC's own records showed this individual was not interviewed by FBI until late June of 21. 3 months after FBI made its origins call, and that at the interview, the individual, quote, said nothing about COVID origins, end quote. The briefer's conclusion, quote, FBI has either been withholding information from the rest of the IC, intelligence community, or they provided inaccurate information on the record, end quote. The FBI briefer did not respond to his follow-up request. Number 3, classified readout of Fauci's CIA briefing shows he steered the IC toward natural origin scientists. On June 4th of 2021, CIA's Weapons and Counter-Proliferation Mission Center, or WCPMC, briefed Fauci on classified COVID origins intelligence from the president's daily brief. The previously classified readout shows that Fauci directed CIA to connect with specific scientists, described as individuals who, quote, have advocated for features of the virus that they judge to be consistent with a natural origin, end quote. He was being briefed on the IC's classified analysis while simultaneously recommending that the IC consult experts who supported his preferred conclusion. The readout also notes that he, quote, did not appear to be aware, end quote, of certain specifics about WIV's pangolin research that CIA had uncovered. And number 4, a CIA senior official confirmed he personally stopped analysts from shifting to a lab leak finding. In the same September 2024 HPSCI briefing, when Wenstrup asked CIA about reports that their analysts shifted from, quote, lab to, quote, undecided, a senior WCPMC official jumped in and explained that he personally made the call to stop the shift to a lab leak assessment because new information had arrived the day before they were ready to publish. This was the IC's own account in response to a whistleblower's claim that CIA paid analysts had not to make the lab leak call. The internal readout treats this as a legitimate analytic management decision, but it confirms the core allegation that CIA analysts were moving toward lab leak and were stopped by a superior. Wow. Number 5, pre-pandemic DOE warning to NIAID about WIV, which IC officials didn't know about. Internal IC emails from November 2023 responding to a Vanity Fair article showed ODNI officials asking the Department of Education whether it was true that in mid-2019, Deputy Energy Secretary Dan Brulette warned NIAID that the coronavirus research the U.S. was funding at WIV risked being misappropriated for military purposes. The ODNI analyst writing the query notes, quote, "To the best of my knowledge, nobody in the IC was worried about that in mid-2019. A second claim that Brulette told Fauci in October of 2020 that DOE scientists had found evidence the pandemic originated at WIV also prompted the analyst to write that it was, quote, inconsistent with everything I've seen from DOE, and quote, the significance. Senior IC officials whose job was to track COVID origins were apparently unaware of direct warnings that had reportedly been given to Fauci's agency before the pandemic even began." By the way, DOE is not Department of Education. I don't know why I spat that out. I'm just so used to Department of Education whenever I see DOE. All right, so moving on to number 6, DNI reportedly told a congressman that CIA was 2/3 in the lab leak camp. An internal classified email from an ODNI analyst preparing for a briefing flags that, according to a lead majority staffer, the DNI herself had told Rep. Winstrup that CIA was 2/3 in the lab leak camp, but that analysts were being held back by the remaining third, probably the leadership. The CIA briefer and the ODNI analysts both said they had never heard this. This is either a significant claim about the actual internal state of CIA's assessment that was being kept from working level analysts, or a case of the DNI making representations to Congress that her own staff couldn't verify. And number 7, I think this is the last one. Early IC analysts acknowledged the furin cleavage site looked like gain of function, then urged caution. March 2020 internal IC emails, now declassified, showed analysts at the State Department's Bureau of Intelligence and Research and elsewhere candidly writing that the virus's furin cleavage site was consistent with a GOF modification, while urging caution before making that assessment. One analyst wrote, quote, "I cannot imagine the Chinese not doing this type of research, but an escaped P3+/P4 LAI, or a laboratory-acquired infection, would be extraordinary," end quote. These emails showed that the IC was privately entertaining the lab leak hypothesis from the very beginning, even as the public narrative treated it as a conspiracy theory. Well, that just takes me back to Jon Stewart. Remember, he was, I don't know who he was on, Stephen Colbert or something like that. Yeah, I think it was Stephen Colbert. And he mentioned that the whole like natural origin of COVID was ridiculous because it happened in Wuhan, China, right next to the Wuhan Institute of Virology. I think it even had like coronavirus on the name of the building or something, and he was pointing the like glaring obvious that it was a lab leak, but that was back when nobody was allowed to talk about that, or else you'd get canceled. So anyway, from Larry Sanger once again. So he says, finally, I asked Claude to summarize the most important findings. Here is what it said. Holy cow, this is long, but I'll get through it. The newly declassified documents paint a picture of an intelligence community that was privately taking the lab leak hypothesis seriously from the earliest days of the pandemic, with analysts noting as early as March 2020 that the virus's furin cleavage site looked consistent with gain-of-function modification, while the public-facing scientific establishment, led by Fauci, treated the idea as a conspiracy theory. Oh, I remember those days, when a formal whistleblower complaint alleged that classified intelligence contradicted Fauci's sworn testimony to Congress about NIH funding of gain-of-function research at the Wuhan lab. The DNI's office routed it not to an independent inspector general, but to HHS Secretary Becerra, Fauci's own superior, who had already indicated the matter was considered. Meanwhile, Fauci himself was being briefed on the CIA's classified COVID origins analysis, during which he steered the agency toward consulting scientists who had publicly advocated for a natural origin. And IC officials later discovered that a pre-pandemic DOE warning to Fauci's own agency about the risks of the WIV research had apparently never reached the analyst tasked with investigating the virus's origin. Holy shit. The documents also reveal that two of the IC's most prominent agencies behaved in ways that undercut the investigation's credibility. At the CIA, a senior official confirmed that he personally intervened to stop analysts from shifting to a lab leak finding, lending internal corroboration to a whistleblower's claim that the shift was blocked from above. At FBI, the official appears to have told Congress under oath that the Bureau had interviewed a key individual whose information informed its origins assessment, but DNI's own records indicated that interview occurred months after FBI had already made its call, and the individual said nothing about COVID origins when finally interviewed. Taken together, the picture is not one of a government carefully following the evidence. It is one of an investigation in which the most sensitive leads were either rerouted to the people they implicated, bottlenecked by management decisions at critical moments, or contradicted by agencies' own records, all while public was assured that the science was settled. Wow, man. Or even more briefly. So this is an even more brief summary, I guess. The declassified documents show that the intelligence community privately took the lab leak hypothesis seriously from the very beginning, and that every critical juncture, someone in authority intervened to smother it. A whistleblower complaint was routed to Fauci's own department. Fauci steered CIA toward natural origin scientists while being briefed on their classified analysis. A CIA superior blocked an analyst from shifting to a lab leak finding. The FBI misrepresented a key interview to Congress. The thread running through all of it is institutional self-protection. Whenever the evidence threatened to implicate U.S.-funded research, the investigation was quietly redirected. It's almost as if they didn't want the public to know that there was any gain-of-function research happening in the first place. Probably why they were doing it in China and not here. Quote, what evidence is there in the PDFs that Fauci's org funded the very creation of COVID-19? AIT delivers a preemptive wow. The documents establish a strong circumstantial chain, but do not contain a smoking gun classified document proving the virus itself was created with Fauci's money. Here's what they do contain. Oh my God. It goes on and on. The funding pipeline is confirmed and undisputed. NIAID, Fauci's agency, granted money to EcoHealth Alliance, which subgranted roughly $600,000 over 5 years to the Wuhan Institute of Virology for bat coronavirus research. The documents also include EcoHealth's 2018 DARPA proposal, Project Defuse, which described work to be done at WIV that involved sequencing bat coronavirus spike proteins, reverse engineering them, inserting them into other coronavirus backbones, and infecting humanized mice to test their capacity to cause SARS-like disease. Wow. DARPA rejected this proposal as too dangerous, but NIAID funded EcoHealth for bat coronaviruses work that continued at WIV anyway. EcoHealth's own belated progress report, filed 2 years late, covering the critical 2018-19 period, showed that NIH-approved experiments made genetically manipulated viruses more lethal in mice. The strongest direct claim comes from the Murphy Memo, a Washington Times article circulated within the IC, in which Marine Corps Major Joseph Murphy, working with DARPA, concluded that SARS-CoV-2 was an American-created recombinant bat vaccine, or its precursor virus, produced through the EcoHealth WIV program. He described it as a synthetic chimera that leaked before it could be attenuated, likely escaping in August 2019 because it had been aerosolized for delivery to bats in caves. But this is Murphy's analysis, not a confirmed IC finding, and the IC never adopted it. What the classified material adds is not forensic proof of creation, but evidence that the people in a position to investigate that question had every reason not to, and behaved accordingly. The newly declassified IC emails show the investigation was repeatedly redirected away from the implications of Fauci's funding role, which is arguably more damning than a single piece of lab evidence would be. It explains why such evidence was never officially found. Holy moly. Go here for video and the links. The real blockbuster. Okay, so he eventually links to Tulsi Gabbard. Tulsi Gabbard blamed Fauci for funding the very lab that created COVID-19, and she declassified a bunch of information that she implies proves his direct involvement. At this point, we should ask, did the Wuhan lab create the virus deliberately? I would almost conclusively and with great certainty say, yeah, probably. And look, my own personal conspiracy theory that Democrats were colluding with the Chinese to leak the coronavirus out into the public because their TDS had just gone that absolutely effing insane. Again, it's just a conspiracy theory. There's no proof behind that. A lot of people would say that's completely ridiculous. I don't know. Just in my opinion, that's not out of the realm of impossible. So anyway, update. Grok did an excellent job surfacing even more stories that Claude did not catch. So let me just see how long this goes. Okay, so he has a whole bunch of information here. I think I've already read a fair amount, to say the least. But what I'll do, I will repost this. There's a direct link below to my profile in the description. So we got all of that information from Claude, which, you know, that's one thing. And then this one comes from Grok, which is the AI system that is embedded in the X platform. So I guess you can get Grok's take on it. And according to Larry Sanger, there's even more evidence in here, or more findings that Claude didn't even catch. So let's go back, because I have another post that's not as long as this one, but it's a little bit wordy. But I think it's going to be another banger. So hold on, just bear with me when I finally get back to there we go. Okay, so this one comes from Nuri Vitachi. The U.S. caused the COVID pandemic, not China. The U.S. government revealed today. It's time the American people learned the real story, Spy Chief Tulsi Gabbard in a sensation-causing video released on X and a statement on the internet. And what a story it is. Truth at last. The U.S. spent millions to finance a lab in China's Wuhan to experiment on killer viruses. The research was on a technique called gain-of-function, which some people see as a weaponization of the viruses. That research is now widely viewed as the source of the unintentional lab leak that sparked the pandemic, said Gabbard, director of national intelligence. This dangerous research caused immeasurable harm and countless lost lives, she added. The preferred narrative after the pandemic broke out, Washington then worked to tell the world that it could not have been a lab leak. The preferred story circulating at the time was to say that animal to human transmission evolved in China due to the circumstances there. You remember that? They were peddling that bullshit all year, and it didn't make sense from the get-go. It really didn't. But the evidence tells a different tale. The U.S. spy chief said, releasing a new batch of top-secret documents today, her last day in office, it's time you know the truth. 120 biolabs, which she released that information at least a week ago. I went over all that right here on the Swamp, too, the whole 120 biological labs that are across 30 different countries. Some of these laboratories were involved in the research on hazardous pathogens. Dr. Anthony Fauci, while serving as the head of the National Institute of Allergy and Infectious Diseases, sent millions of dollars of U.S. taxpayer cash to be spent on bat coronaviruses at the Wuhan Institute of Virology. In 2019, the COVID-19 virus apparently emerged in several locations around the world, but was first formally detected by scientists in Wuhan, China at the end of 2019. It was soon found all over the world. Let's see. So for the U.S., the preferred story was that it was not a lab leak because the world would realize that the Pentagon was financing biolabs around the world and at home. People raising the alarm about the biolabs were accused of pushing Russian and Chinese disinformation. I remember all that too. When the existence of the labs could not be denied, the BBC and other media reported that they were peaceful labs, which were financed for entirely positive reasons, a line that Pentagon watchers found hard to swallow. Lied about intelligence connection. Fauci worked with senior intelligence agencies in the early days of the pandemic to shape the narrative, but lied about it. In his testimony before the House Select Subcommittee on the coronavirus pandemic in 2024, he was asked under oath whether he had communicated with intelligence agencies concerning viral research before, during, or after the pandemic. Fauci replied, "Not to my knowledge about COVID." By January 25, many people were puzzled when former President Joe Biden issued a preemptive pardon, and there it is, to Fauci. Pardons, by definition, are given to people who have broken the law, but this had not happened at that time. Gabbard is retiring to spend more time with her husband, who has cancer, unfortunately, but she wanted to get the truth about the subject out there before she disappeared. She says the evidence indicates the U.S.-funded research was the root of the problem. The COVID-19 pandemic caused tremendous hardship and pain for millions of our fellow Americans and for countless people around the world. Links to her statement, the documents are provided below. The U.S. caused the pandemic, not China, a spy chief Gabbard reveals, or the spy chief Gabbard reveals. Dangerous research caused immeasurable harm and countless lives lost. Absolutely incredible. And let's see what else we got. From the SCIF, DNI Gabbard just dropped the COVID bomb, declassifying it all. This is the full 4-part documentary set. All the files in one place that he detailed all in one single video. So if reading's not your thing, like just going through PDF document after document, he put the entire thing in a video that you could just simply play and pause as you go. The full declassified series tells a clear timeline of lies, backdoor funding, and a clear cover-up of the manufacturing of bioweapons. And it looks like he just goes over the summaries again. And I think that we've pretty much gone through all of that. Yeah, okay, so let's see. The summary of each document set. I don't think we went through those. So let me just go through that part. So part 1, so the first one, let me see if I can find it. So that's the summary. Okay, so this is part 1, the International Assessments Report. And the summary of that document is the core early evidence in IC split, declassified compilation of 2016 to 2023 materials. The key items: February 2020, the Fauci meeting on origins data; 2016, Wuhan Institute of Virology synthetic biology paper; also the 2018 U.S. diplomat biosafety warnings; 2021 IC 90-day assessment, one agency moderate confidence lab incident at WIV, the FBI lab leaning, others low confidence, natural; Fauci's 2012 GOF pandemic hypothetical letter, and $600,000 worth of NIH funding to WIV via EcoHealth. Accusations focus on Fauci and the IC suppressing lab leak discussion and stonewalling Congress. And part 2 includes the internal IC debates, the Rand Paul bombshell, the internal 2020 and 21 emails and transcripts, which I believe that I have a clip of Rand Paul describing that we're going to watch here in a little bit. Shows the IC avoiding Fauci as reviewer due to conflict of interest. Debates on whether the furin cleavage site indicated GOF, gain of function. Features a detailed Rand Paul transcript accusing Fauci of orchestrating a cover-up, commissioning scientists to publicly deny lab origin while they privately suspected it, CIA reversing a 6-1 lab leak vote by analysts, unlogging Fauci CIA visits, approval of GOF-style research without safety oversight, and China lying for weeks about transmission and WIV illnesses. Just bombshell after bombshell. Part 3. 2021 official shift plus genetic evidence. May of 2021, news clippings and documents around Biden's 90-day origins probe order. It includes IG in divisions, WIV researchers ill in November 2019, Fauci defending WIV funding and Senate testimony, reference to Daszak describing spike protein manipulation, whistleblower complaints that intelligence contradicted Fauci's gain-of-function denial, and a key position paper arguing, quote, high probability, unquote, SARS-CoV-2 was lab-produced with specific engineered S protein changes and a 12 nucleotide insert. Also references 2008 synthetic coronavirus reconstruction paper. And the fourth one, so that was, let me see. Yeah, so this is part 1, part 2, part 3, and this is going to be part 4. So the one that starts with some handwriting up at the top. This part includes reinforcing internal materials, additional declassified internal communications and assessments continuing the same themes. Limited extractable text appears more image and redacted heavy, but reinforces prior parts with further documentation on origins assessments. Also, gain-of-function research links, funding questions, and accountability issues. It fits the overall pattern of highlighting lab-related evidence and alleged suppression and cover-up efforts. Combined narrative across all 4 parts. From 2016 capabilities and 2018 warnings, early 2020 awareness meeting, 2021 divided IC assessments, leaning lab key places, genetic arguments for lab manipulation, a whistleblower contradictions of Fauci, strong public accusations of orchestrated cover-up by Fauci and elements of the IC plus Chinese obstruction. The release challenges the early natural origin consensus and calls for transparency on U.S.-funded risky research at WIV. It's time for prosecutions. Indeed, it is. So this is going to be, I'm not going to play the whole thing. I'm just going to show you what it is. So it's, let me see. Hold on. Yeah, it's really loud, so I'll just mute it. It's just ambient music. So it is 24 minutes and 20 seconds in total. He goes through page by page the entirety of the documents. So you could basically, if you want, if this is a more preferred way to go through it all, you could just look at it and pause whenever you want to pause and have a look at what's on the paper. So there's tons. What appears to be a lot of stuff redacted at first, but I watched like the first minute of it, and it looks like as it goes in, there's not like a whole lot. See, there's not a whole hell of a lot of redactions, at least in the early parts, with the exception of like the first several pages. So I will have that linked. Whoops. There we go. So I will repost this, and there's a direct link to my profile below in the description. You can also go to, let me get his name or his handle, the SCIF. So he'll also have that there. and grabbing the timestamp, which I should have grabbed it first. Okay, so 12:34 in the morning today, June 19th, because he's probably posting all throughout the day. So, you know, like the way it's set up on the X platform, the most recent post is at the top and it just goes older as you scroll down. So you can find it that way, or you could go the easy way and just go to my profile and it'll be right there. All right. So let's go on to the next thing, man. Talk about a lot of information from Rand Paul. The closest comparison I can make to Anthony Fauci is J. Edgar Hoover, someone who wielded institutional power for decades, had connections everywhere, and used both money and pressure to control the narrative. So let's take a look.
Also been dogging about going after Dr. Tony Fauci, and you just released some new documents that suggest he was deeply involved with the intelligence community, the National Security Council there at the Biden White House. What did you learn, and what can we do to hold him accountable? Because we've talked about this for so long. Can we take action now that you've gotten these documents?
You know, the closest thing I can
Probably
use
not.
in comparison would be J. Edgar Hoover, who was in charge of the FBI for 70 years, had secret files on people, pressured people, gave people money, threatened to expose people. That was J. Edgar Hoover. And we were so upset by it that we tried to reform it in the 1970s because of what he had done to our country. Anthony Fauci was there for 40 years. He was paid more than the president. He abused his office. He had his tentacles into the intelligence community. And he basically changed the narrative.
The entire
narrative that he didn't want out
was a lab
was that
leak.
he had funded gain-of-function research and that this dangerous research led to a pandemic that killed 15 million people.
Yeah.
He didn't want that out.
Crimes against humanity,
And so what he
for
did
fuck's
is he
sakes.
changed the truth. He obscured and covered his tracks, and he got scientists to say, oh, no, this came from the wet market, when the science was already known. We have emails from him in January of 2020 admitting that it didn't come from the market, that there were lineages of this separate and before the market, and that the marketplace with the unusual animals they eat was an amplifier event. It wasn't the origin of it.
Nope, it wasn't.
He knew this early on and yet promoted a different narrative. He paid people and gave scientists $8 million grants in order to obscure the truth that he had the responsibility of this.
The lies never seem to end. Senator, we appreciate you.
It is absolutely insane. And I bet Anthony Fauci is probably getting a massive pension probably too. Would not be surprising at all if he was. I mean, this is unbelievable. This has to be the biggest scandal probably in American history, involving one individual, Anthony Fauci, being in the center of all of it and steering the narrative. And what's the most appalling thing, like I said earlier, that people who were even questioning the whole wet market and suggesting that it was a lab leak, people were getting instantly just completely banned off of social media by just simply posing that question. People were, their YouTube channels were getting nuked if they made a video just asking that question. Well, it could have, like, why is it so crazy to say that it could have been a lab leak? I mean, it could have been, and then all of a sudden their channel would just get absolutely obliterated, just gone. And it just, I don't even know, man. I'm kind of at a loss for words, but it's good that we're getting the information out now. Not that I think we're going to really see any justice out of it. And like Rand Paul said, like at least 15 million, probably a lot more than 15 million people ended up dying from COVID. Not to mention the countless trillions of dollars that were just wasted. Our inflation had ballooned up unbelievably. Not just the US, there were other countries that suffered way worse than we did with inflation. I mean, like Canada, they've gone absolutely crazy. I mean, their inflation it's not like triple digits or anything, but it's a hell of a lot more expensive in Canada now than it was in 2019, just like every other place around the world. And it just goes on and on. And it's just absolutely appalling, man. So anyway, I got this from Rep. Anna Paulina Luna just in time for the upcoming MK Ultra hearing. And this was posted yesterday from the Daily Mail. Spy world panic as Tulsi Gabbard prepares to unleash a bombshell file dumps on secret CIA mind control project and Dr. Fauci. So I didn't hear anything about the whole CIA mind control. I never like to read the Daily Mail because it's usually just a trash tabloid in my opinion, but I'll at least link it. But I didn't hear anything that Tulsi Gabbard had with regard to her mention of MK Ultra. It's fascinating. I'm aware of what it is, but I didn't hear her talk about it. So I don't honestly really see it relevant to go through the Daily Mail article. But again, it'll be linked if you want to go into it. And so that was from yesterday. And from Tulsi Gabbard, and this was from 21 hours ago as of this recording. And she says, I just walked out of ODNI Gov HQ for the last time. Thank you, President Trump. I remain grateful for the profound honor of serving the American people and our nation as the Director of National Intelligence. DNI Gabbard out. And she already dropped the DNI from her profile name. Although she does still retain the gray government badge. Not sure for how long. That's something that the X platform will eventually probably drop. Probably replacing with her blue check mark. And of course, there's the image with her getting her final farewell. Hopefully she'll return, because that would, mean that would actually mean two things: that we would be getting an effective individual back, but also that her husband would be recovered, hopefully, best case scenario. So hopefully he makes a speedy recovery. I know they said he has a rare form of bone cancer, and she didn't really elaborate in much detail as to his prognosis and what things look like. At least not that I saw. Perhaps she may have done an interview, or maybe she dropped something that gave more details. Personally, I didn't see it, but I'm not saying that she didn't. It's very possible that she may have provided more information. Okay, so let's move on to the next topic, the reflecting pool. You remember during this week, I shared a few posts from news outlets and other individuals talking about how the reflecting pool was green and that there's algae in there, and that Trump's project is an absolute failure. Well, this is happening, posted 7 hours ago by Brian Hollyhand. He says the reflecting pool has gotten more coverage than the Somalian daycare fraud, Laken Riley's murder, Biden's mental health decline combined. And I tend to agree with it, because CBS News and all the other ones, they've been talking about the reflecting pool a lot this week. And let me see when this was posted. So yesterday at 6:18 p.m., so just yesterday evening, paint was seen peeling from the floor of the Lincoln Memorial reflecting pool in Washington, D.C. on Thursday, weeks after a $14 million renovation that included a new color President Trump called American flag blue. So let's have a look at this. So as you can see, what appears to be debris. So yeah, it definitely looks like that it's peeling off, right? That's what it looks like. It looks like it's completely botched. Looks like they did a terrible job, that it's peeling already. And so that's the video. Again, that was from yesterday, and they're not the only ones that posted that video. There were other individuals that were out there filming what appeared to be debris floating around in the reflecting pool. That, I mean, it's definitely a part of the sealant that they had put down, or whatever they called it. From Anonymous, for sale, $250, American flag blue paint chunk. This is your chance to own a part of history. Celebrate our 250th anniversary with this piece of latex paint, freshly retrieved from green waters of the Lincoln Memorial reflective pool in Washington, D.C., valued at $14 million in taxpayer dollars. And let's have a look at this one from Nick Sorter. Just last night, U.S. Park Police detained a suspicious man carrying a pitchfork and a bucket around the Lincoln Memorial reflection pool. It's unclear what the man was planning on doing with that pitchfork and bucket, but it's certainly not a regular sight at the pool. This came shortly after the 8647 inscription was discovered on the pool's sealant. Although it's unknown if these two situations were related, I've reached out to the National Park Service for comment, but haven't yet heard back. So we'll take a short clip at this from last night, what was going on. U.S. Park Police interviewing this probably far leftist with a pitchfork and a bucket. Okay, so we got that one. Let's move on to the next one. Let's go back. Okay, the next one, exclusive. Bombshell sabotage the Lincoln reflecting pool. A man was arrested for cutting out a big piece of blue sealant. Now it's all starting to make sense. A man jumped in. Oh, hold on. Yeah, I gotta fix the video settings. Okay, it should be
in the
good.
reflecting pool today with
what the hell? What's going on?
These crowds around. Cut out a huge piece of the blue sealant and tried to get away, but he was arrested.
Unbelievable. But not really. Totally believable. So it would appear as if leftists might be cutting out parts of the bottom of the reflecting pool. So there you go. There's that. Okay, so it wasn't my video.
Jumped in the reflecting pool today with.
Yeah, I guess it was my video. I don't know what the hell's going on with that. That's weird. That's never happened before. It glitches out like that. Strange. Okay, next order. The next one. Now, the National Guard troops are monitoring the Lincoln Memorial reflecting pool like hawks after a man was arrested for jumping into the pool and ripping sealant off the bottom. Deranged leftists are literally vandalizing the pool just to get Trump. Insane to think that this is where we are as a country. So it's the leftists going in there and ripping up the sealant on the bottom of the reflecting pool. And that is exactly the reason why there were chunks of it floating in the pool, while the mainstream media was blaming a botched job. Okay, maybe that'd be a little better. Maybe I got slow internet tonight. Okay, on to the next one. All right. And this one from Eric Doherty. WTF, another leftist has been arrested for disrupting President Trump's Lincoln reflecting pool. He grabbed the hose being used to clean up the algae. Leftist goal is to keep it filthy as possible just so they can get Trump. It is a mental illness.
Yeah, that's fine. We'll get a case number for you.
What's happening? Can I help? Huh? Can you help? I think that's really funny. I think that's a joke. It's funny.
I wonder who's paying her. Surely she's getting paid by somebody.
Yes, go that way.
Getting arrested. You must have not got the memo from the fellow leftists that they do it under the cover of darkness. I mean, dude, they could be held liable for repairing this thing, which could probably run into millions of dollars, I would imagine. It's probably going to cost, arguably tens of thousands of dollars, probably just to drain the damn thing. Maybe not, but still. I mean, to have to repair that, it's going to be a hell of a job. It's just absolutely crazy. So let me go to this. Like I said, leftists dumping algae in the pool last week. That was what I mentioned the other day here on the Swamp. Maybe it's the leftists that are to blame for this. And now it just seems like it's starting to add up, starting to make sense. Maybe last week, some leftist at night started dumping in buckets of algae, just hoping that it'll mix in, and that's probably exactly what happened. That's probably how the algae got in here in the first place. Team Algae. They're having a pro-algae protest or rally or whatever the hell you want to call it. So that would just be my belief. I mean, not really a belief, but just a random passing thought that perhaps it were leftists that were dumping algae maybe from one body of water and collecting it from a body of water and dumping it into the reflecting pool at some point. Probably happening last week. Maybe not. Maybe it just got in there naturally because it wouldn't be the first time that the reflecting pool had algae in it. Happens probably every summer. So anyway, that's happening. And we can go ahead and move on to the next. Actually, hold on. Nope, never mind. This is still related. This is from Glenn Beck, so still sticking on the reflect and pool topic. We are 10 years into Trump derangement syndrome, and CNN has finally found its final boss, pool algae. Sending reporters to take water samples at the Lincoln Memorial reflecting pool is a level of mental illness only the mainstream media could achieve.
This is insane journalism. Check out CNN.
We're in Washington, D.C. in the summertime. This is a shallow pool with stagnant water, abundant sunlight.
That's not me.
Creates a situation where opportunistic algae can really take advantage of the situation.
The renovations, which started in April and finished last week, cost more than $14 million, a far cry from the $1.8 million first expected, and included at least one no-bid contract.
So
there were a
disingenuous,
series
man.
of functional fixes, including repairing leaks and installing a filtration
Get to the
system
bottom of
for the
it.
Of course, what they're not going to tell you is that when Obama was president, they spent over $30 million just simply cleaning it. They didn't put on any sealant. They just simply cleaned it and spent $30 million on that.
first time to help clean the water.
And we're going to scoop up a water sample to
favorite
see if we can get this tested.
CNN independently took the
face.
sample of water.
There is now
Hilarious.
a pro-algae arm of the left that is protesting after we killed the algae.
Which we just watched in the
this.
last video.
They're pro-algae protester. Is that?
They put the
Who knew
algae
this
in there,
even
man. I'm
existed?
telling you, man. They
It's
did
a
that.
mental
They did that last week.
illness. Glenn. I mean,
These people are evil and stupid.
Yes, it's been 10 years.
They're trying to
Why do we need
sabotage American
1,000
250. That's
stories
what
on
they're trying to
this
do.
stupid
They're trying to ruin our
Lincoln
4th of
Pool
July.
Really don't.
algae story?
I don't know.
they didn't
Yeah,
do
but to be
anything
fair,
on
y'all are
how many
talking
times
about
it's
it.
been fixed, and they fixed it poorly.
All right. So anyway, that's what they've been talking about the last couple of days. And then, of course, when the chunks they started noticing chunks floating around the reflecting pool, the media just started jumping straight to conclusions that it was poorly installed and it was an absolute just a botch job, and it's going to cost millions of dollars to do all over again. And I'm sure they were hoping to carry that story on in probably over the next couple of weeks on into the 4th about how Trump's attempt to beautify Washington, D.C. has just been an absolute disaster. Okay, let's move on to the U.S. Air Force. The VC-25B bridge aircraft has officially arrived at Joint Base Andrews. Take a look at this, the new Air Force One. That looks awesome. So if you remember, President Trump, he's had a scale model of the new and improved Air Force One in the Oval Office. I think it sits at the table in the center of the Oval Office. I believe he's had that there since like 2017, like back during his first term. And they finally had delivered it, and that's how it looks. It's not fully ready yet. I think they said that they're going to do like test flights or something like that. Here is some more information from the Air Force at Air Force or AF.MIL. And it's news released out of Joint Base Andrews from today. The Air Force's VC-25B bridge aircraft has officially arrived at the Presidential Airlift Group and will commence its initial commissioning flights, marking the successful delivery of a secure modified executive platform, fresh from receiving its new red, white, and blue livery and the final government modifications. The aircraft has entered service to provide critical, secure continuity for the Commander-in-Chief. Okay, so they're done with testing. They're done with it. It's good to go. Like, they're ready to roll it out. The delivery of the bridge aircraft fulfills an imperative to relieve pressure on the aging VC-25A fleet as heavy maintenance cycles extend, safeguarding the continuity of presidential airlift operations until the long-term Boeing VC-25B enters service. Quote, the safety and security of the Commander-in-Chief is our highest priority, unquote, said Secretary of the Air Force Troy Mink. From the beginning, we meticulously evaluated every requirement to accelerate delivery while maintaining the high standards expected of the presidential mission. This effort proves that the U.S. Air Force can move fast without sacrificing quality, security, or reliability. The commissioning flights are the final exam for the aircraft modification. Okay, so I thought that I did read that somewhere. Like, they're not it's not like ready. Like they have to make some final adjustments or test flights or something like that. They provide both an opportunity for the White House enterprise to validate mission capability while also finalizing protocols required to safely and securely transport the President of the United States and enable his execution of his 3 constitutional roles: Chief Executive, the Commander-in-Chief, and the Head of State. Once these flights are successfully completed, the aircraft is officially commissioned into the active executive airlift fleet and becomes available for presidential missions along with the VC-25A and C-32 fleets. Safety, security, and secure communications at the forefront. The bridge program represents what is possible when the collective stakeholders across the public and private sector align behind one foundational mission outcome. Any aircraft bestowed the call sign Air Force One must meet rigorous security requirements to ensure the president remains safe, protected, and fully connected. The VC-25B bridge aircraft was modified under a disciplined engineering approach that prioritized these exact core capabilities above all else. The aircraft is safe, secure, equipped with the most advanced technologies necessary to meet the requirements of the presidential mission. Those requirements were carefully crafted to prioritize mission over aesthetics, leaving much of the previous head of state interior layout minimally changed. No risk was taken in security, safety, or mission communications, but the collective team made trades on some of the less commonly used mission sets that Boeing must deliver to support the next 40 years. Balancing acceleration with security and operational readiness, the VC-25B bridge program represents a fundamental shift in rapid secure capability delivery. Every facet of the bridge program was oriented toward acceleration and thinking differently. Operational readiness depends on 3 key components: mission capability to perform assigned tasks, highly trained personnel to operate and maintain the aircraft, and adequate logistics support, including spare parts and resources, all of which were rigorously assessed. To ensure mission capability, an elite group of interagency experts developed benchmark protocols to detect and, if necessary, neutralize potential technical hazards on the previously owned aircraft. The training pipeline started last October with the lease of an Atlas Air 747AF to begin training pilots and maintainers, followed by the purchase of a Lufthansa 747-8I as a full-time training asset for the entire crew complement. Additionally, a full 3-dimensional mock-up of the interior of VC-25B bridge delivered in January of 2026 provided the White House enterprise the ability to begin familiarization training ahead of the bridge's first commissioning flight. Underpinning the entire program is logistics support. Acceleration focused on procuring initial spares and establishing a supply chain, not only for this aircraft, but as a launching point for future 747-8 fleet. Quote, "We are proud to deliver the VC-25B bridge aircraft to the President," said Air Force Chief of Staff General Ken Wilsbach. Many thought it could not be done, but the United States Air Force was able to execute and provide a secure, reliable airborne command post on an accelerated timeline. And delivered they did. And it has been rolled out. And we will look at the next, which is a video, which I believe President Trump is here in attendance. I think he's the one who walks out of the airplane. Unveiling of Air Force One. American strength and dominance exemplified thanks to President Trump. As he walks down. So I don't know if it actually flew somewhere. I don't think it did. It might just be some photo op thing, but you know, just with that music alone playing, there goes any future monetization for this video. So it's not going to be monetizable because every time that song plays, that's exactly what YouTube tells me. So just keep that in mind if you end up doing any YouTube videos where that song is playing. And if you're looking to monetize that video in the future, it won't let you unless you cut that out of your video. So I'll be looking forward to that. And from Secretary Chris Wright, always proud to be an American, but especially proud today as USMNT, the U.S. Soccer Men's National Team, brings home another victory. As we cheered for our country today, we're reminded that sports have a unique way of bringing people together and uniting fans around the world. Also, not to mention with the national anthem, it brings us together as Americans and everybody feels a bit more patriotic, if only for but a minute. But anyway, this is Secretary of Energy Chris Wright at the game.
Always proud to be an American. American, but especially proud today at the World Cup to see the USA win their second straight game. Feeling the energy of Team USA, feeling the energy of FIFA.
Hell yeah, man. I hope they win the whole damn thing. Of course, we all do. I mean, every country hopes that it's their team that wins it all. And that is excellent. Got 2 under their belt in the World Cup. And we've got Secretary Doug Burgum, who shared 2 videos of the crowd outside in the National Mall. They have this big jumbotron that's set up out in front of the House of Representatives at Capitol Hill. And we'll take a look at this one first. There we go. In celebration that they won. Oh, crap. All right, it was only 8 seconds, so we got through it. That's why it stopped. So here's another one, a bit more exciting.
Not an offside position.
USA! USA! I'm sure they'll get to that. There you have it. That would have been awesome to be there in our nation's capital to watch that. And like I've said repeatedly, I don't ever watch any kind of sports whatsoever. I mean, I had a stint a couple of years where I watched the Tampa Bay Lightning regularly. But, you know, subscriptions and all that nonsense, it gets too expensive, and I ain't got money for all that. But still, that's really exciting. That's very cool. It's very awesome. I came across that today. And from U.S. Central Command, U.S. Air Force F-16 fighter jets receive fuel while flying a patrol over the Middle East. U.S. forces in the region remain present and vigilant. Check out some refueling. Off he goes. Yep, keeping to the mission. Even though we've already removed the blockade, we're still going to maintain a military presence over the next 60 days because that's how long this temporary agreement with Iran is to be in place until a final peace agreement is signed. And it's within 60 days, so it could happen in a week. It could happen in a couple of weeks. I doubt it's going to happen tomorrow, but they've got 60 days to iron out all the details so a final agreement can be made. And from U.S. Central Command, another one, statement from Admiral Brad Cooper, CENTCOM Commander. I could not be prouder of our 15,000 men and women in uniform who supported the blockade over the past 2 months. Their dedication and professionalism were on full display every day, ensuring strict enforcement while still supporting humanitarian aid flow. There is no mission too great for our warfighters who make up the most powerful military the world has ever known. Admiral Brad Cooper, CENTCOM Commander. And I believe I found that from Secretary of War, Pete Hegseth. I think he reposted that, and that's how I happened across that. And from the White House, Iran is finished. From President Trump's Truth Social, we didn't meet out of desperation. Iran did. They are finished. We'll play out the 60 days. They get no money, not 10 cents. And again, like I still remain kind of conflicted on that because a part of this agreement, which I did read, and I actually chose last night, if you watched The Swamp, I had 2 choices. I had CNN or I had Fox News, and I decided to go with Fox News to see how they would cover that part of this temporary agreement with regard to $300 billion. And it was outlined in it that $300 billion worth of, I can only assume would be repairing of certain infrastructure that may have been damaged during Operation Epic Fury will be allocated to just that. Although I think what Trump is getting at is that we're not going to give any money to the Ayatollah or those who are in charge, the IRGC, the leadership in Iran. It sounds like that $300 billion is going to be used, if Iran so chooses, to have certain things repaired. Then they'll have this slush fund or whatever the hell it is, and it's going to be procured by other countries, as far as my understanding goes, that there's going to be a group of countries who are going to chip in to try to come up with $300 billion, which is absolutely insane. So more of that to come as we get closer, or once we get that final agreement in place. And from Rapid Response 47, the president on wielding power. And we'll just go straight to it
In that
because it's
span
just
of
a quote.
time, what is the one big thing you've learned about wielding power?
Well, I think you have to do it judiciously. I think that experience is good. I always say that potential is far more important. In other words, having ability is far more important than experience, but having both is very good. And I learned a lot during the first administration. And I was told just the other day, because, you know, we had a tremendous G7 and very dominant G7. We got what I wanted. And somebody said the other day that this is a far more powerful administration or term than the first one. And we had a good first term. You know, we had the best economy. We had a lot of good things happening. We rebuilt the military. We did a good job. But I feel it's a more powerful term.
Oh, for sure.
Than the first one. Now, that comes with experience. It also comes by having somebody precede you who was a disaster. I mean, the man was a disaster. And so when you're compared to somebody like that, you look maybe better than you are. That's possible. But I feel that it's a very powerful administration right now.
Yeah, my own personal belief, I think that a president's second term is always significantly more powerful than the first term because he's not going to get reelected for a third term. So you can kind of safely take the gloves off when you're on in your second term because you don't have to, please everybody in order to get yourself reelected, getting, all the chess pieces lined up and everything. So, like whatever's going on in your first administration, I assume that I don't think playing ball would be the right way to put it, but just, like minding your P's and Q's and being extra diplomatic and just showing the American people how presidential you are. And then when you get into the second term, then you can probably start executing a lot of those things that might be maybe not controversial, but certain things that a lot of politicians probably wouldn't really want to have done that the American people would love to have done. But anyway, so that's Trump's take on wielding power. And that was on the Axios show, which I've never seen before, but there you go. From the DOW Rapid Response Medal of Honor recipient, Major James Capers Jr. has just been inducted into the Pentagon Hall of Heroes.
The Pentagon's Hall of Heroes contains the names of the service members in our nation's history who have been awarded the Medal of Honor. Major Capers now joins these illustrious warriors as the 3,534th Medal of Honor recipient to be inducted into the Hall of Heroes.
There you go. Looks like he's getting up there in age. But you know what? I would imagine that a lot of people who are inducted are probably posthumously, is that the right word? Like after they've passed away. So let's get a little backstory on Major James Capers Jr., then a second lieutenant leading a 9-man force reconnaissance patrol with 3rd Recon, Battalion, I think? 3rd Marine Division, received the Medal of Honor for extraordinary heroism during a 4-day reconnaissance mission near Phu Loc, Vietnam from March 31st to April 3rd of 1967. His team repeatedly clashed with superior enemy forces in contested territory. On the final day, they were ambushed, including by a Claymore mine and heavy fire. Despite severe wounds, gunshot injuries, shrapnel, and a broken leg, and significant blood loss, Capers continued directing supporting fires, coordinating his team's defense and movements, and overseeing the evacuation of all his Marines and their scout dog. He refused evacuation until everyone else was safe, even getting off a overloaded medevac helicopter at least once. The award, upgraded from his earlier Silver Star, was presented by President Trump at the White House on June 18th of 2026. The official citation highlights this conspicuous gallantry and leadership above and beyond the call of duty. In short, he saved his entire team while gravely wounded in a prolonged fight against overwhelming odds. Wow, man, what a story. It sounds like that might have been like maybe the inspiration for like that scene like in Forrest Gump. that's what that reminded me of, especially with it mentioning Vietnam, of course. But anyway, a good story for sure. Very glad that he made it through and was able to receive the Medal of Honor. And Under Secretary of War Elbridge Colby, he says, I represented the Department of War yesterday at the Ukraine Defense Contact Group. Our policy has been to encourage and enable Europe to take the lead in supporting Ukraine, and that shift would be consistent with Ukraine's self-defense. That policy is working, and we are leaning forward to continue it. So maybe that's why the topic of Ukraine hasn't been so front and center with regard to politics or even in the mainstream news. It sounds like, well, it doesn't sound like it. I mean, he's telling us that Europe is taking a central role in providing support to Ukraine, which kind of makes sense, like why we haven't I haven't come across a whole lot of information on Ukraine from the government side. Not to say that there isn't any out there. I just haven't really seen anybody in the cabinet or any like head figures really talking about Ukraine all that much, up until now at least. From the beginning of last year, this administration has contended that Europe could and would take the leading role in providing for its conventional defense, including by providing the great bulk of support for Ukraine, and that such an approach would be consistent with a viable Ukraine defense. We regard this policy as having been borne out. And in the past year, European allies have taken the leading role in supporting Ukraine's defense, assuming the responsibility for the financial support of Ukraine, as well as providing their own arms to Ukraine. I mean, last I heard was that we were producing the weaponry and Europe was purchasing the weaponry from us, and they were therefore, in turn, handing it over to Ukraine, which I thought was weird because some European countries, they purchase energy from Russia. So they're kind of funding both sides in a roundabout way. But anyway, at the same time, we have been prepared to provide weaponry purchased by Europe for Ukraine's defense through President Trump's PURL initiative, and allies have contributed significantly to the signature example of practical, results-oriented transatlantic cooperation. So there you go. That's what I thought we were doing. That transition of support to Europe has not only been implemented, it has been correlated with the sustained effective defense by Ukraine. Indeed, without engaging in hyperbole, in recent months, we have reason to think Ukraine's situation has even improved. This is critical. Europe not only can take more responsibility for its own defense, that assumption of responsibility can be consistent with a strong and stout European defense. Much has been done, but far more remains. Ukraine's defense does hold, but continued and sustained support from allies is essential to maintain it. It is important that NATO allies continue and indeed increase their support for Ukraine's defense through the PURL initiative. And I just saw the other day that there was heavy bombing that was, they said it was in Moscow from Ukraine. That Ukraine was hitting parts of Moscow, including some oil refining facility. But I didn't include it because it wasn't like directly swamp related. So, there you have it. This is an opportunity for Europe to do precisely that, and in the process, help to set and strengthen the conditions for lasting peace in Ukraine that the previous speakers have already laid out as our shared goal. And there you have it. But yeah, I mean, I totally agree with this comment. We shouldn't bail them out again. Europe used to be a vacation spot, not anymore with their BS. Yep, ain't that the truth? I mean, I don't know about the whole vacation spot. Yeah, I'm sure that Europe was a hell of a lot more peaceful 10, 20 plus years ago than it is today. That's for damn sure, especially in those tourist hotspots. Okay, so that's some of the information as to what's going on with the Ukraine-Russia war. And moving on to EEOC Chair Andrea Lucas. So let me get a quick look. Advancing colorblind equality, merit, and individual rights in the workplace. So let me start with Assistant Attorney General Harmeet Dillon, because she's replying to what Harmeet Dillon is saying. And Harmeet Dillon, by the way, she heads up the Civil Rights Division at the Department of Justice. And she says, swing and a miss. Major League Baseball encouraged players to wear Black Lives Matter on their uniforms, but reportedly threatened Christians who write Bible verses on their hats. U.S. EEOC will investigate whether this amounts to religious discrimination, which it certainly sounds like it does. I didn't notice the Black Lives Matter. I thought it was for Pride Month. I thought that's what the hats were. I thought it was like some Pride Month thing because there was like rainbow colors like on the team's logo on their hats. But a couple of the pitchers, they wrote Bible verses across their baseball cap, and the MLB told them, essentially put them on notice. Like they didn't suspend them or anything, but they basically said, don't do that. And I guess like the Civil Rights Division at the Department of Justice, they're looking into it. So this is a letter that she issued. Robert D. Manfred Jr., Commissioner of Baseball, Major League Baseball. So the U.S. Department of Justice, the Civil Rights Division, penned a letter to Major League Baseball to put them on notice. Title VII of the Civil Rights Act of 1964 prohibits employers from discriminating against any individual with respect to his compensation, terms, conditions, or privileges of employment because of such individual's religion. Employers are required to reasonably accommodate an employee's religious observance unless doing so would impose undue hardship on the conduct of the employer's business. According to media reports, Major League Baseball has warned and or is considering discipline 3 players of the San Francisco Giants who refused to participate in Pride Night. That's what I thought it was. I thought it was Pride Night, not Black Lives Matter. The 3 players expressed their opposition to MLB's pro-Pride orthodoxy by inscribing Bible verses on their rainbow-colored hats. The Civil Rights Act prohibits MLB and its franchises from unreasonably burdening the rights of players with religious objections to serving as the league's vehicle for pro-Pride messages. Federal law is clear. Employers must modify their uniform requirements to reasonably accommodate their employees' exercise of religion. So, in other words, they may have to start allowing the pitchers to not dress themselves all up for Pride Month, if they so choose. Maybe. MLB has asserted that its warning to the Giants players had absolutely nothing to do with the content of the message and that it merely is enforcing a policy that prohibits writing on uniforms. Yet MLB has allowed players to wear uniform patches reading Black Lives Matter. Well, there you go. This double standard under which players may not inscribe Bible verses on hats for 1 game only, but may wear Black Lives Matter patches for 1 game only, calls MLB's true motives into question and raises serious concerns about MLB's compliance with Title VII. Employers may not use facially neutral policies as a pretext for discrimination. The Trump administration is committed to combating religious discrimination. The Department of Justice will use all available means to hold employees accountable for violating the religious rights of their employees. I have referred this matter to the Equal Employment Opportunity Commission for further investigation. From Harmeet K. Dillon, Assistant Attorney General, and also the head of the Civil Rights Division. And let's see what EEOC Chair Andrea Lucas said to that. Thank you for the referral, Assistant AG Dillon. Due to confidentiality requirements under Title VII of the Civil Rights Act that bind U.S. EEOC, the EEOC cannot confirm or deny any potential action or the existence of any charge or investigation, absent a court filing or an agreed-upon public resolution. Rest assured, however, that EEOC is committed to protecting the religious liberty of all workers. Okay. So, doesn't mean that they're not looking into it. They just, if they are looking into it, it sounds like they just can't, publicly state that they are, I guess. And let's see, we've got another one from AAG Army Dillon. I literally wrote that we were referring this matter to U.S. EEOC, Andrea Lucas, not that we were investigating it ourselves. Reading is fundamental. Try it. And of course, she's talking about the San Francisco Chronicle, who said the U.S. Department of Justice has opened an investigation into MLB, claiming the league may have discriminated against 4 San Francisco Giants pitchers on religious grounds after they spurned the team's Pride Night attire. And readers added context, the DOJ referred the matter to the EEOC for investigation rather than conducting its own, which that's exactly what Harmeet Dillon said, that they're not investigating it themselves. But regardless, I'll have this article linked if you want to look into it. Assistant Attorney General Harmeet Dillon disputes what this article is saying, so I'm just going to stick to the side of the head of the Department of Justice Civil Rights Division. But I'll be fair, I'll link it. It'll be down below if you want to have a look at it. Secretary Linda McMahon, school officials under the California governor have continuously boasted the facilitation of secret gender transitions. With this decision, the Ninth Circuit reaffirmed parents' rights to access their child's educational records. Children don't belong to the state. They belong to the parents. And she is referring to SCOTUS, what SCOTUS Wire had posted today from the Ninth Circuit. They have blocked California officials from enforcing parts of a state law that limit schools from disclosing a student's gender identity information to parents. Wow. The Ninth Circuit Court actually agrees with something the Trump administration had been talking about for a while. Very shocking. United States Court of Appeals for the Ninth Circuit. Before Collins, Lee, and co-circuit judges. Before the court is a motion for reconsideration of preliminary injunction pending appeal filed on behalf of plaintiffs, appellants, 2A, 3A, 4A, so on. We have twice denied motions for preliminary injunctions pending appeal, concluding that the relevant plaintiffs and appellants had failed to make a sufficient showing of Article 3 standing. And let's see. In the instant motion, movants assert that in light of Mirahelli versus Bonta, we should reconsider our denial of a preliminary injunction pending appeal. We agree. We grant the motion and grant a preliminary injunction as described below. So it sounds like good news to me. I mean, I'm no expert when it comes to court filings and documents specifically, but I will take Secretary Linda McMahon's word that this is incredible news because the rights belong to the parents, not the state, as she said. So they can't be hiding their attempt to try to transition their students into the opposite sex without informing the parents. This is insane that we've gotten this to this point as a country. All right, moving on to Secretary Mark Wayne Mullen. Let's see. Let me see if he's replying to something first of all. Yeah, okay, so he is. So let's start with this from Rep. LaMonica McIver, Democrat. She says, in a new low, ICE would not let us speak with any detainees inside Delaney Hall. If you know someone at Delaney Hall, if you love someone at Delaney Hall, tell them to request a privacy release form so we can get them the help they need. And how long is this? Okay, it's short enough. We can get through this.
You want to help us? This is how you can help us today. They told us that in order for detainees to speak to us, they have to sign a privacy release form. You use all of your platforms to tell people who have family members here that if you want to get help, if you want Congress to open up a case on your behalf or refer you to the many advocates and organizations that have been helping us get people released, have them request a privacy release form so that they can sign them, they can get them back to our office, and we can help them. We have to be strategic on how we fight back in this moment. While we're going to fight this in court, we want to make sure that we're helping as many people as we can right now in this moment.
I mean, she really has nothing better to do. Like, there's really nothing else that your constituents actually need done. You know, you're representing around 800,000 Americans, but yet you're advocating on behalf of illegal aliens, criminal illegal aliens, those who have been arrested for crimes inside the United States. Those are the people that are in that detention center, maybe with the exception of a few here and there. Maybe it's not completely 100%, but I'm pretty sure that it's a detention center for those who have committed crimes inside the United States after they illegally entered. So let's see what DHS Secretary Mark Wayne Mullen, who is the head of the Department of Homeland Security. So this is what he says about what she's talking about. Each member's office was advised of the steps required to speak to detainees per the DHS's policy, and they chose not to undergo that process. All representatives were provided with the ICE facility visitation agreement when they checked in. While DHS requires Congress members to receive the consent of the detainees they wish to visit 48 hours in advance. This is an internal policy and not a requirement of the Privacy Act. To assist the Congress members in getting consent, facility staff provide the Congress members with the general DHS privacy waiver form, but it has no relation to the Privacy Act. DHS implemented the policy to 1. Make sure the detainees wanted or wished to participate in the congressional visit, and number 2, provide the staff with sufficient notice. So there you go. They obviously didn't fill out that form. They didn't include any names because, just like you said, what if some of these detainees don't want to speak to freaking politicians? What if they don't want, their information to be plastered all over the media? I mean, there are some people who want to keep their privacy, and a lot of them are currently under indictment for crimes, and they haven't been convicted yet, possibly, I would imagine. So maybe under the advisement of their lawyer, probably they shouldn't be talking to anybody about whatever it is that they're being held for. So just a wild guess in my opinion, but I'm sure I'm not wrong on at least some of those people that are being held there. Wouldn't that be funny if like they got absolutely nobody who ended up responding after she was at the podium telling everybody what to do? Reach out to our office. Okay, rapid response 47, Secretary Mullen got another one. When you don't respect our laws when you're coming in, how do we expect you to respect laws when you're living here?
Sean, you can't make sense out of where the Democrat Party is today. CNN had a poll out that showed that only 26% of the Democrat Party is proud of America today. And I'm going, what? I wake up every single day and think I am the luckiest man in the world to be born in this country.
100%.
But at the same time, there's a lot of lucky people that have immigrated to this country legally and have been very successful because there is a legal process we had to do it. But when you don't respect our laws when you're coming in, how do we expect you to respect the laws when you're living here as well? And we have one person that dies at the hands of an illegal is one too many. Just in Tennessee, we've had 41 deaths over the last year. This individual we're talking right here. Now, it was
41 deaths in just Tennessee by illegal immigrants. I'm assuming that's the statistic that he just gave us. And then you have Democrats saying, well, a 19th detainee has died in ICE custody. And this is so evil that ICE is just actively murdering innocent detainees. Meanwhile, he throws out a statistic in just one state out of 50 states, like more than double that, of Americans that were killed at the hands of illegal immigrants.
Aspirational.
Okay, Democrats.
From the Secret Service to the FBI and all components within DOJ and DHS was working closely on this case, and they had ambitions, but we were able to track them down because they were also very sloppy at the work they were doing. But it's scary because one lone wolf can do something like this, and we're seeing it too often at the hands of illegals, and every single one of those are preventable. And we see the Democrat Party spend more time protecting the illegals that entered this country that's woefully breaking our laws and willfully breaking our laws, instead of looking out for the law-abiding citizens and encouraging individuals to immigrate here legally.
Yep, and like you said, like with the whole Democrats, like 20 some odd % are not proud to be Americans. I mean, that's just the consequences of the public education system, in my opinion, because they've just all been indoctrinated into just absolutely hating this country in every conceivable way, which is insanely insane. Because there's no better country. I mean, look, I don't even have to go into all those details. And the left, individuals on the left, they would say that, well, there's definitely better countries like Scandinavia. Well, okay, so you mean the ones that are extremely overwhelmingly white. So you just want to go to like pure white countries, apparently. I mean, that seems like it just seems like a contradiction as to your ideology, which if you point that out, then But anyway, like with the entire world's population, if you just break it down by the numbers, just mathematically speaking, when you're born, it's a 1 in 22 chance that anyone who's born in the world is born in the U.S. So, like, for 1 out of every 22 people in the whole world is in America. So, you know, the odds are heavily stacked against you, which, you know, like, I get it. Like, you're born where you're born. You know, like, no matter what, like, well, we're here. You know, we didn't like roll the dice or anything before we were born. And with regard to which country, I'm just saying that, you know, like, less than 5% of the world's population are Americans. And they're not grateful at all. They just want to, in fact, burn everything down and start this whole like communist utopia, which will never exist. It's brutal insanity. Anyway, so I went over this yesterday. The alleged ringleader of the failed terror attack targeting the UFC Freedom 250 event is an illegal alien. Abraham Hermosillo Alvarez from Mexico planned, organized, and directed the planned attack. He was arrested by the FBI on June 14th, and ICE has lodged a detainer against him. Alvarez failed to leave the country when his B-2 tourist visa expired way back in 2001. He was granted DACA by the Obama administration. This illegal alien should never have been allowed in our country, and we will ensure he faces justice and is swiftly removed from our nation. As he smiles that big-ass smile of his, hoping to engage in head up a terror attack against the UFC 250 fight, which as I read the details, it appeared that they wanted to fly in drones strapped with explosives and blow them up in the event. And then as people were evacuating, they were going to be met with snipers who were the terrorists. They were going to start sniping people. And that was the plan. And the FBI foiled that plan, thank God. And the ringleader of the whole thing was an illegal immigrant, of course. Anyway, so moving on to Senator Mike Lee, I introduced the SHUSH, which is Silencers Help Us Save Hearing Act, to end this absurd state of affairs. A suppressor, it's not a silencer, it's a suppressor, by itself is about as dangerous as a piece of pipe. Because it's, essentially what it is. On a firearm, it reduces noise and the danger of hearing loss. We should remove all fees and restrictions and let Americans freely purchase this non-lethal accessory. As it is, a non-lethal accessory. And it's not like in the movies, it's not like James Bond when he fires it. It's like, psh, psh. It's not like that at all. It doesn't sound like that. It's, frankly, whenever you shoot one, it sounds like gunfire. It's just not quite as loud as it would if you just didn't have one on it. But anyway, not sure if that's actually going to make its way through. I don't think that's like the most important piece of legislation we should be focusing on right now. But still, I mean, I think it's relevant. I think it should pass. I don't think that they should have any restrictions on that because it's ridiculous. All right, so let's move on. Oh, here, by the way, Firearms Policy Coalition. So he was replying to this. The legal alert, the Fifth Circuit has ruled that suppressors are arms under the Second Amendment while upholding a conviction for possessing an unregistered one. So there you have it. I'll repost, or I'll link this down in the description, the details of that for your viewing pleasure. And let's head on to the Veterans Affairs. Freedom is America's greatest promise. On Juneteenth, we celebrate the progress we've made toward a more perfect union. Juneteenth, National Independence Day. The people of Texas are informed all slaves are free. And that is Juneteenth. I mean, it's really, I mean, if it's a holiday that is to be celebrated by one party or the other, it certainly would lean heavily toward the Republicans, since the Republican Party was the party that freed the slaves, not the Democrats. The Democrats were the exact opposites. They wanted to keep the slaves around. So I went to Google's AI to ask about Juneteenth, which is a federal holiday in the United States celebrated annually on June 19th to commemorate the effective end of slavery, also known as Freedom Day, Emancipation Day, or Jubilee Day. The holiday's name is a portmanteau of June, I'm sure I'm butchering that, and 19th. It marks the historic day in 1865 when Union Major General Gordon Granger arrived in Galveston, Texas to enforce the Emancipation Proclamation and alert the last remaining enslaved population that they were free. And that is a great day indeed. So it just goes over some more just basic information on it. So then I decided to ask it, did the Republicans or Democrats end slavery? Of course, I already know the answer to that. The Republican Party ended slavery, and then it goes into the details like the historical alignment and congressional vote on the 13th Amendment and so on and so forth. And then there was a follow-up that I asked, why did Democrats oppose it, though? In the 19th century, Democrats opposed the abolition of slavery due to a combination of economic self-interest, deeply ingrained white supremacy, and a strict states' rights political philosophy. So wait a minute, white supremacy? But that's what they call the Republicans all the time, right? That's what they call the Republicans. White supremacists. So Democrats were white supremacists? Yes, in the 19th century, Democratic Party was explicitly the party of white supremacy. And during the Civil War and Reconstruction eras, Democrat leaders openly campaigned on maintaining a racial hierarchy. They used white supremacist rhetoric to unify their voters, protect slavery, and later to strip newly freed Black Americans of their civil rights. I mean, I'm sure you're not going to hear a word of this in the public school system these days. And let me see if I got anything else. I think I do. Oh, wow, that is insanely ironic, isn't it? Well, it's one of the biggest political paradoxes in American history. I don't think that the Democrats being a party of white supremacy is a paradox, which I think that's what I elaborated on. It's not a paradox at all. You're absolutely right to look at it that way. When you peel back the party labels and focus strictly on the underlying ideologies, the shift is not a paradox at all. It is a logical, predictable progression of American political interests. The transformation makes perfect sense when you look at the core drivers of American politics. Well, I would say that, yeah, it has been a progression because Democrats are not allowed to have slaves anymore. So then they progressed from physical slavery to mental slavery. And that's kind of where we are today with, I don't know, the welfare state. And so is that why Democrats continue making everything a race and identity politics issue? And why they keep pushing for the welfare state, right? Yeah, welfare state. Modern Democrat Party's focus on racial equity, identity, and the social safety net is a direct result of the political realignment that took place during the 20th century, which obviously is not what Democrats wanted. Hence, Jim Crow era, which were Democrats. When the party's voter base shifted from white Southern conservatives to a diverse coalition of urban, minority, and progressive voters, its platform changed to reflect the interests of those groups. And anyway, so I don't know if I really have anything else. I mean, that was kind of Jim Crow was also Democrats, though, right? And that was up to 100 years after slavery ended, which it was. Yes, Jim Crow laws were entirely created and enforced by Democrats. And that system lasted for exactly 99 years after the Civil War ended. Following the abolition of slavery in 1865, Southern Democrats used their total control of local and state governments to build a legally enforced system of a racial apartheid. And I mean, these are the Democrats for you. And, you know, some things, yeah, they might change a little bit here and there. But like I said, they were no longer allowed to physically maintain slavery. So they had to come up with more creative ways in order to try to keep that clinch of power over the minority American population as much as they could. Enter the welfare state, just in my opinion. All right, so let's move on to the DOL, Department of Labor, the Office of the Inspector General. Fraud Friday, the crackdown continues. The U.S. Labor IG recaps this week's schemes brought to justice. The DOL, OIG, and the White House Fraud Task Force on the case every week. So we're going to watch a 3.5-minute summary as to what happened in the fraud arena this week.
Hey, everybody. This is Anthony D'Esposito, the ninth Inspector General here at the United States Department of Labor. Another week and another win for the American taxpayer. We were busy putting fraudsters behind bars and delivering justice. Let's run through this week's Fraud Friday. First up, 3 defendants were collectively sentenced to 101 months in prison following a multi-year investigation into a transnational human smuggling and labor trafficking ring. The conspirators illegally transported Mexican and Central American workers into brutal conditions on farms in Georgia. They allegedly reaped over $200 million from the scheme, laundering the proceeds through cash, purchases of land, homes, vehicles, businesses, cashier's checks, and by funneling millions through a local casino. Federal labor programs are not playgrounds for criminals. This scheme preyed on vulnerable individuals and corrupted a lawful worker program for illegal profit. Let these sentencings send a crystal clear message. If you exploit workers and if you abuse programs designed to help vulnerable Americans, my office will find you and hold you accountable. Next, Christopher Staggs of Alaska thought he could steal COVID relief benefits using fake identities and a Chicago shell company. Over $170,000 in fraudulent UI claims later, he's looking at 2 years in prison, 3 years of supervised release, and restitution. Staggs filed false and fraudulent UI applications across Alaska and other states, stealing personal identities of victims who were under the impression that he was assisting them in actually applying for the same UI benefits. This is exactly why my office exists, to hunt down criminals like Christopher Staggs and make sure they answer for every dollar stolen and every life disrupted. This isn't just fraud, it's betrayal of Americans. And finally, an Oregon woman, Jamie Ann McKenzie, was sentenced to 3 months in federal prison, 3 years of supervised release, and ordered to pay more than $30,000 in restitution. McKenzie used victims' personally identifiable information to apply for over $27,000 in unemployment insurance benefits, which she used for personal expenses. The victim was left unable to receive the benefits that she needed through the temporary assistance for needy families. If you steal from families in need, there's a prison cell waiting for you. Under President Trump's leadership and Vice President Vance's task force, we are winning the fight against fraud. Together, we're putting an end to the widespread theft and manipulation of the American taxpayer. Department of Labor programs are not a safe haven for criminals. My office is laser focused, and we're coming for you. If you suspect fraud involving labor programs, call our hotline at 1-800-347-3756 or visit oig.dol.gov. Follow us on social media to learn more about our ongoing efforts in this war on fraud. I'm Inspector General Anthony D'Esposito. Thanks for watching Fraud Friday. We'll see you next week. Stay safe, and God bless these United States of America.
God bless America. The war on fraud. Now imagine what all these people that are getting arrested for all this, imagine what they would accomplish if they just put all that time and effort into just good old-fashioned honest work. But I guess not. Guess they thought they could just take the easy way out. even though I'm sure they probably had to put a lot of time into, going through all these schemes and defrauding American taxpayers. All right, so the DOL OIG, just one more from Anthony D'Esposito. Fraud crackdown, U.S. Labor IG. Fraudsters listening at home. You should sleep with one eye open because we are coming for you. The DOL OIG is teaming up with the President and Vice President's White House Fraud Task Force to deliver real results, putting fraudsters behind bars. Great work with the DOJ's Fraud Division. And let's have a look at this.
I also want to commend the leadership of our Commander-in-Chief, President Trump, for putting together the Fraud Task Force. Every day, working together, bringing agencies and prosecutors together to execute precision-defined investigations, to hunt people down, to prosecute them, and to put people behind bars. With the team you have on the stage and with the agents working throughout the United States of America, I will remind the fraudsters that are listening at home, you should sleep with one eye open because we are coming for you.
Sleep with one eye open. They're coming for you. Acting Secretary Keith Sonderling in the Trump administration, under the leadership of the President and Vice President on the White House Fraud Task Force, we're not putting up with rampant fraud and waste and abuse anymore. And Katie Pavlich tonight, or Pavlich, I will be the first Secretary of Labor to cut off your unemployment insurance system if you don't put these fraud control measures into them. Keith Sonderling breaks down the fight against unemployment fraud and the staggering amount of pandemic-era benefits lost to fraud.
Let's get to this. You sent letters to every governor in the country demanding immediate action to stop unemployment fraud. You're saying places like New York, the state, are losing $2 million of taxpayer funding every day to fraud.
Day.
So why was a letter necessary, and what did it say, and what are you threatening to do to the states?
Well, thanks to President Trump's leadership in creating the task force on eliminating fraud, and then Vice President Vance running this, the Department of Labor has a seat on that. So they've given me and the department a license to really go after fraud. And if you look at unemployment insurance fraud, if you just take a step back to the pandemic, $900 billion was given out during the pandemic. 135 billion of that was stolen to fraud. That's one of the largest thefts of your taxpayer dollars in American history. So in this administration, under the Vice President's leadership with this task force, we're not putting up with it. So I sent an historic letter yesterday to 53 governors of states and territories. And I said, I will be the first Secretary of Labor to cut off your unemployment insurance system if you don't put these fraud control measures in them. And we see this fraud continuing to happen even post the pandemic.
Have you gotten any response from them?
Well, I think
you just sent it, so
I just sent it, and they better implement these fraud controls, like identifying
are you who you
say you are. Did you work for that employer?
Checking an identification.
Are you alive?
Are you alive?
Are you 3 years old? You know, all these different areas that they didn't check that allow this unchecked fraud to continue. In this administration, we're putting a stop to it, and we're not afraid to cut off a state if we need to, and it's never happened before.
Yeah, because what I read the other day was that the states, they allocate taxpayer money to pay for unemployment benefits inside the state, but they also receive federal tax dollars that mainly goes into the operation of their unemployment system. So the staffing, the salaries, and everything. So if they're not getting the federal funds, it would be a lot more difficult for them to operate, period. So in other words, they're on notice, and they better shape up and fix it. And plus, with the hundreds of billions of dollars that have been stolen, it's got to amount to hundreds of thousands of people. It's going to be mind-boggling to hear the final number. And I keep going back to the Department of Labor, Kelly Loeffler, who submitted over 500,000 individuals to the Department of Treasury, flagging all those people, 500,000 people, for fraudulently receiving money during the COVID era. I think it was the Paycheck Protection Program, and it was the other the business loan program that was issued during COVID. And it's unbelievable that hundreds of thousands of people are probably going to get charged with fraud. Absolutely should if they committed it. Anyway, so Secretary Brooke Rollins, this is from yesterday. The fraud we've uncovered so far is only the tip of the iceberg. In states that agreed to work with the USDA, we found 186,000 deceased individuals tied to benefit rolls. Now, again, I got to repeat this. In the states that have agreed to work with the USDA, in other words, not the blue states. The blue states, they're not handing over their voter rolls to make sure that there's nothing fraudulently happening there. They're not handing over their food stamp rolls to make sure that there's nothing fraudulently happening there. It makes you wonder why. They got nothing to hide. What the hell are they holding it back for? Not only are they doing that, but they're actually actively suing the federal government to try to keep all of those details a secret. So anyway, more than 400,000 duplicate benefit recipients. Insane. And that's before we've yet gained access to data from states like California, the most populated state in the country, also New York, among the most populated states in the country, and Illinois, also a very populated state too. In the last several weeks alone, the USDA has helped uncover massive fraud. Antonio Bonheur, Boston, $7 million fraud scheme. Abdid-Wahid Mohammed from Minneapolis, $1.1 million. Crystal Garcia, Baton Rouge, $126,000. And Cody Simmons from Baton Rouge, $126,000. Under the vice president's leadership in the White House Fraud Task Force, we're following the data, exposing fraud, and restoring accountability to the government. Our goal is simple: protect taxpayer dollars while strengthening these programs for the families, the seniors, the children, the vulnerable Americans who rely on them every day.
Well, that's what I've been saying. Listen, we're partnering with all the red states. They've been great partners. And just in that data collection over the last year, we found 300,000 dead people, right? People using
that's just in the red states. Imagine the blue
security numbers. We found over 500,000 people getting more than one benefit. So getting the same benefit twice, for example. And these are in the red states. Can you imagine when we begin to partner with California, New York, Illinois, when we get that data, once we get through the litigation, what we're going to find in those states? I'm from a red state. I worked in state policy. Texas has guardrails. We do more than almost every other state to make sure that there isn't a lot of fraud. And I would argue that many of the other red states do the same. But yet what we found is stunning. What we're going to find in these blue states is going to blow everyone's mind. The vice president has done a remarkable job of leading the fraud task force, and he and our other senior team has said the more fraud we can root out, the more we can protect those who really need these programs, but also protect the taxpayer and ensure that we're doing everything we can to finally balance the budget. The federal government's footprint has significantly shrunk. I read that the government is about the same size today as it was in the 1960s, which is a remarkable achievement as we move people from welfare to work. But this fraud is a really big component of that.
Yeah, that's actually been the case for a while. It's been several months since I read that we've downsized the numbers of people employed by the government to the levels that, we haven't seen since the 60s, as she said. And with California, also learned the other day that California owes the federal government over $20 billion because they overpaid all kinds of different entities. So that probably doesn't even include the SNAP benefits and also the Department of Labor with unemployment and just all kinds of shit. And the small business loans that the federal government was probably paying for, that California's probably on the hook for. And I don't even know, man. It's going to be absolutely just earth-shattering. No wonder they're actively suing the federal government, because they don't want to see the true number. It's probably going to be just downright terrifying. Oh, so that's where all the federal deficit went to. That's why we're $40 trillion in debt, because, we uncovered probably roughly half of it. It's all been fraudulently stolen from us. Okay, so the Department of Housing and Urban Development, about 400,000 units of new housing have been built in opportunity zones thus far, which created 500,000 new jobs.
Beyond housing reform, Secretary Turner says he also sees expansion of HUD's opportunity zones, passed as part of the One Big Beautiful Bill, as a key part of increasing housing stock.
For housing, about 400,000 units of new housing have been built in opportunity zones thus far, which created 500,000 new jobs. And so we're excited about the second iteration of opportunity zones being made permanent.
All right. Well, I guess that's good news for employment for sure. Although, does the middle class have access to any of these opportunity zones, though? I mean, I have a feeling that probably not. But anyway, it's only 59 degrees in Michigan. That's crazy. I thought it was summertime. It's basically summertime at this point. That's crazy, man. It's not even 60 degrees there. It's hot where I live, man. It was like 93 degrees today. Humid as hell. That's just the way it goes. It's going to be like that every day until freaking October. All right, let's go on to the next one. Secretary Sean Duffy, strong ports mean a strong American economy. That's what I saw firsthand at the ports of Indiana. Yeah, that's right. Indiana has ports because the Lake Michigan, it borders Indiana. This powerhouse not only supports 28,000 local jobs, but generates $4.6 billion in economic activity. Under President Trump, we're unleashing American maritime dominance, securing our supply chains, and lowering costs for families. And Seaway, US DOT, the Great Lakes, St. Lawrence, and so on. And we've got a few images when he was visiting up in Indiana. I'm not sure exactly where this is. Probably, well, maybe around Gary, I would assume, maybe. So, yeah, big port, man. Billions of dollars. I would never have guessed that much money flows through ports in Indiana, of all places. That's interesting. Roll on. U.S. DOT, rapid response. It is happening. America's airports are becoming modern. Denver Airport is the latest airport getting an upgrade with a $43 million investment for new surface tracking radars, enhanced communication technologies, and much more. Secretary Sean Duffy and Congressman Gabe Evans are there to see how this transit hub is becoming even better for travelers.
Denver will be able to invest roughly $43 million in changes to air traffic control, including installing new surface movement radars that will help detect other aircraft and vehicles on the runway, as well as other conflicts that could cause a collision.
This isn't just about safety and efficiency. This is about jobs. Of Americans doing this remarkable build of new equipment that's going to be deployed, not just in Denver, but it's going to be deployed all over the country and make your flight better and your flight safer.
The funding will also replace paper flight strips to electronic ones, modernizing communication between air traffic control workers, replace old radios from the 70s and 80s, replace displays for ATC workers, and install new IP voice switches. All things that both Congressman Gabe Evans and Transportation Secretary Sean Duffy say will lead to smoother travel for passengers.
As we look to all these flights, I want to see less delays, less cancellations, people moving more seamlessly through our national airspace.
Air traffic control is still using technology from the 1970s. Wow, unreal. And Pete Buttigieg, back in the Biden administration, he was supposed to do all of this, but of course he never got around to it. So Secretary Sean Duffy has to clean up the mess and modernize our airports across America. So this image from Stephen Miller, let's get some context into this. So disgraced propagandist posts this. Insane thing happened in Ipswich, Massachusetts. Probably butchering that too. Winning lacrosse team seniors photographed smoking cigars while celebrating their graduation. They were forced to forfeit their entire season just before the big playoff game for, quote, violating state athletic association rules against tobacco use, end quote. Parents and students tried to claim that the cigars were fake, which I'm sure they weren't fake, but a thorough investigation is conducted and a damning receipt from Shaw's grocery store is found, despite parents' attempt to smudge out the date on the receipt. You live in a prison and you don't even know it. So, yeah, they were celebrating with cigars. I'm sure they're all 18. I'm sure they're all legally allowed to smoke cigars if they so choose. But they were forced to forfeit. And Stephen Miller, he just simply shared this image of some military guys back in the day smoking cigars, probably also 18 years old. At least it appears that they probably were. Even though back in the day, 18-year-olds looked way more manly than they do today. Well, plus, they went through a lot of rough shit back in the day compared to today with our soft society. All right, Secretary Kennedy, this is what I'm going to finish up on. America faces more than a chronic disease epidemic that threatens our physical health. We also face a spiritual malaise that undermines our mental health. Our children are increasingly isolated, fragmented, and anxious, spending more than 8.5 hours a day on screens. This summer, put down the phone and reconnect with nature, with family, and with your community. It's time to take back your health. Eat real food. Get active. And together, we will make America healthy again.
Hi, I'm Robert F. Kennedy Jr., your HHS secretary. We came to Colorado today to announce HHS's new website, getactive.gov. We have a chronic disease epidemic in our country. 80% of adults not get enough physical activity. 77% of our kids can't qualify for military service. 35% of our teens are obese or overweight. But in addition to the chronic disease epidemic that affects physical health, we're also suffering through a spiritual malaise that affects our mental health. A malaise of isolation, of fragmentation, of atomization. Our 16-year-olds are now spending 8.5 hours per day on social media. The principal cause of death now in that age group is suicide. They're consumed with anxiety, and no wonder. They don't know how to downregulate their feeling. They don't know how to mediate disputes or accept defeat. And the remedy for all of that is connection. You get connection through other people, but you also get it by connecting to creation. And that's a prescription, not just for the chronic disease epidemic, but also for the mental health crisis in our country. Go to getactive.gov. We will teach you how to connect with the national parks, eat real food, get outside, get active, touch grass. And that's how you make America healthy again.
That's how you make America healthy again. Getactive.gov, right? Was it .gov or .org? Crap.
.gov.
.gov, okay. It was .gov. Getactive.gov. I mean, it's summertime. Go camping, go fishing, go hunting, go outdoors. The state parks, city parks, local parks, even the U.S. parks. You go to one of your national parks. I'm sure all 50 states have national parks. And, that reminds me, I probably should go to the beach this weekend. I haven't been to the beach since the water became 80 degrees because I don't swim unless the water's 80 degrees because, I'm a pansy like that. I don't like cold water. But, all right, so anyway, that's going to do it for this episode. And if you enjoyed the video, please give a quick like and subscribe. And I'll be back on Monday as we explore the swamp Monday through Friday. Also, I post daily on X, which is where you can peek at the content for the next episode. And don't forget, the video clips from tonight will begin dropping on this channel tomorrow morning. Thank you very much for watching. God bless the troops and God bless America.